Ground rules are that I have the questions already. We have a very limited amount of time, so if you want to come up, anybody running for the General Assembly, take your seat at the table, and we're going to start asking questions right away.
Let's do it this way. It's going to be 2 minutes.
Right.
I hold this up, that's your minute. I hold this up and stop and I holler at you.
For your records, this is for it's just
Oh, cool.
background.
All right, cool, thank you.
Yeah, I know. There's no light on it there.
Okay, we got three.
Only four.
Okay, again, because of the nature of the beast and the time, I'm going to start off, and whoever wants to go first can go first.
And let me, for the camera, please introduce yourself and what you're running for.
Go ahead. Start with Mr. Burke.
Hi, I'm James Burton, Democratic candidate for the 15th District State Representative position.
Bill Dunn, Democrat, running for the 19th Representative District.
I'm Dave Brady. I'm running in a primary for the 1st Senatorial District.
Hi, I'm Paul Baumbach. I'm the endorsed Democratic candidate in the 23rd Representative District.
Anybody else coming up here? Hurry up, let's go. No disrespect, we're on the clock.
Brian Townsend, Democratic candidate for 11th State Senate District.
Okay. At 12:45 today, Senator DeLuca, who was supposed to be sitting next to Mr. Bryan, canceled on us. Again, we'll start from this end and go down. Can you tell us your name, your background, why you're the best person running for the office you're seeking? Go. 2 minutes.
My name is Brian Townsend. I'm born and raised in Newark, Delaware in the 11th Senate District. Grew up in the neighborhood of Breezewood off of Chestnut Hill Road, Route 4, back behind Scottfield. Moved into Westover Woods on Old Baltimore Pike in the mid-90s. Went to Christina District Schools my entire life, Cobbs Elementary, Stubbs Elementary, Gauger Middle, then Glasgow High School. After graduating, I went to the University of Delaware. I went to law school at Yale, and now I'm a practicing attorney in Wilmington. My first time running for office. I'm engaged to my fiancée, Liliana, who will join us shortly. Parking lot was a little more crowded than we thought it would be. Currently practicing attorney at Morris James in the field of corporate and commercial litigation. That's following a clerkship I had at the Court of Chancery down in Georgetown, Delaware, with the former Chancellor William Chandler. I'm the best person qualified for the state Senate because of my background in the community, understanding where we've been and where we need to go, because of the effort that I've exerted over the past 5 months, knocking on doors nearly every night to understand firsthand the issues in the district, how the men and women and families of the district are feeling. Because of my efforts over, sorry, what does that mean, 15 seconds?
1 minute.
Thank you. Because of all the meetings I've attended over the past 12 months, various civic groups, PTAs, school board, to understand firsthand what's going on. I entered the race in part because of the challenges I knew the district's facing. When Glasgow High School was taken over about 1.5 years ago, it was a partnership-done school that certainly drew my concern, having gone to Glasgow. When I realized that young men and women are moving their families out of the district, trying to get into Pennsylvania schools, I thought we had to have more energy and effort focused on working together to solve the issue with our schools underperforming. I also ran because I believe there currently is a lack of leadership in the state Senate district. There were too many instances of using government power for individual gain. I confirmed that with many civic leaders as I attended meetings throughout the district and rarely saw our current state senator there. As I've knocked doors over the past 5 to 6 months, I've met very few people who have heard from the state senator over the course of the past 14 years. And altogether, it was very clear to me that the only way we're going to solve the problems that we face as a community is to work together. Thank you very much.
Mr. Burke.
Hi, my name is James Burton, Democratic candidate for the 15th District State Rep position. Let me say to you earlier, I got my education out of Philadelphia, where I originally grew up at. I have a associate degree in business, I have a bachelor's degree in business, also have a master's degree in social administration. But I've held jobs in terms of working within the community, as in terms of social worker, caseworker when I was in Pennsylvania, but also what I've done, helped to organize when I was in Pennsylvania. I'm a union card-carrying member, even though I retired from my Commonwealth job after 26 years of working in law enforcement. But let me say that in terms of being the best candidate, it's because of my past working experience, plus my degree that I've earned over the years. As I said, I work here in the state of Delaware now with the mental health agency as well in terms as to working with local organizations in terms of getting out the vote. I work with them in terms of trying to strengthen the community. Also, I helped to fight off Wawa back in 2004 in terms of trying to put the station within our area, which I currently live in there, and other organizations that I'm currently working with. I'm the candidate who listens to people. I've been going out to their various homes, various developments to try to get an idea as to what the issues are. And the issues to me, what they've been saying in terms of transparency. We listened to the insurance commissioner who just spoke earlier in terms as to some laws that should be informed, laws that should be told to people as they purchase a home in the state of Delaware, regardless as to where you live. Well, transparency is the key thing. When you're buying something, when you're doing something, as he spoke in terms of our great democracy, well, democracy is not being adhered to because, number one, people get involved and they don't know what to get involved in. But me, as a state representative in the 15th district, will bring all those things to light. People need to know, and they want to know as to what is happening within their community, what is going on in terms of state government. And I feel that I'm the best candidate to facilitate that based on my skills and ability, based on my past experience and all the things I've been involved in. And also, I worked with the Department of Elections in terms of working the polls, in terms of the inspector for the past, I guess, since 2004. So that has given me an opportunity to talk to people. I know people. I meet people where they are and try to resolve issues in terms of where they are. So I'm the person who can facilitate the issues in terms of what is happening within the community, as well as crossing the aisle in terms of working with majority as well as minority parties.
As many of you know, I'm Bill Dunn. I initially started into the campaign season running for county council president because of a great deal of concerns I had about different things that I've dealt with over the past 10, 12 years in civic leadership roles, not only with Milltown Limestone Civic Alliance, but this organization as well, the Civic League for Newcastle County. I decided to switch over to the House race after Speaker Gilligan decided he would retire. I've been part of his district committee within the Democratic Party for the past 15 years. All of this ties to the fact that I've lived my entire life in the area in which I live now. I am within 2 miles of it, and 27 years within the district that I'm running. I have been focused on the community and things that benefit the community throughout that time, either through civic leadership roles, sitting on the local Ray Place School Board, involving myself in sports activities, Stanton Newport Little League, and the Scouts at the local church in that area. All these things tie back to family and quality of life and things that we should all be focused on when we're looking to represent the people in a certain community. I have lived there, I plan on staying there, and I'll probably die there. And I want to do everything I can to make sure that the interests of the people, irregardless of what portion of the district they live in, what socioeconomic background they come from, what their affiliations are in labor or outside of labor, are all represented in a responsible manner. And that anything that impacts us, environment, transportation, traffic, public education, are dealt with as appropriately and responsibly as we possibly can.
I'm Dave Brady. I'm running in a Senate primary against the President Senator Harris McDowell. My background is that I grew up in Claymont, been there since 1942. I graduated from Claymont High School, went in the Marine Corps for 4 years, got out. I worked at the post office in Claymont. I worked at the Chrysler Corporation. I worked at Sun Oil Company, and meanwhile I decided I better go to college. So at 30 I started at University of Delaware and finished here in about 3.5 years. I went into public education. Several years later I decided to go to law school, and I graduated from Delaware Law, which is now Widener Law, in 1982. And meanwhile, that time I was in another primary. That was my first primary. This is my second for state representative. And so when I graduated from law school, I didn't take the bar, so I never did do that. But I was elected to the House of Representatives and served there 20 years. And I was gerrymandered out in 2002. And so I was busy enjoying life, and I sitting back, and all of a sudden I get faced with another gerrymandered district in where I live. and I thought they're still doing it, they never quit, and so I thought I'd better jump back in and see what I can do about good governance, the way the state ought to be run. I'm active in the community, been active forever in Claymont. Besides that, my opponent is involved in the thing that's, the rumor mill has, it's being investigated. And I hate to see this election go down without that being resolved. And apparently it's not going to be resolved. I'm talking about the sustainable energy utility, which is being investigated. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Paul Baumbach, candidate for the 23rd Representative District. Thank you all for being here today. Really appreciate it. I wrote up my background and I almost put myself to sleep. So rather than list it for you, it's on our website, paulbaumbach.com. I'll give you the cliff notes of it. I went to the University of Delaware in 79 to 83. I have 2 degrees. I have 3 financial designations. I set up my business on Main Street in Newark in 96. And I have been very involved with the community really ever since we moved back here in 1990. I met my wife at the University of Delaware. I've been involved, I serve on the Newark Housing Authority Board. I was appointed by the governor. I've been volunteer teaching through the Delaware Money School. Many of you may have taken classes through the Money School. Then Treasurer Jack Markell helped found that. I've done that since inception in 1999, was voted favorite teacher this summer in that program. I was very pleased with that. I've been endorsed by 2 organizations I'm pretty darn proud of, and I want to talk about that for a second, because what does endorsement mean? Endorsement means that, we have a primary, we have 3 different candidates. If there's not a lot of distance between them, then those organizations don't make an endorsement. But when there is a difference, a clear difference, then they're going to stand forward and say, no, we really support this person. The Barbara Giddings Stonewall Democrats endorsed me as the only candidate in this race, not because of what I said I'm going to do, but what I have done and what I'm committed to continue to do, and that's working for equality. The county Democratic Party endorsed me also, again, not based on just what I say I'm going to do, but what I have done, what I am doing, what I continue to do. I'm the president of the Progressive Democrats for Delaware, and I've worked not just with PDD, but PDD working with other groups to get good stuff going. We've been fighting for stopping the gerrymandering. We haven't succeeded yet, but we're making progress on that, and I think that January is when we're going to start actually having that happen. We've been successful in having the FOIA law applied to the General Assembly. They've been exempt from that for about 25 years, and thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Claudia Bach. I am also running for the 23rd. I'm very thrilled to be here tonight. I come from a very small town in upstate New York, Jamestown, New York, which is much like Newark. That's why I chose to spend my adult life in Newark. I have a degree in deaf education and special education. I graduated from Syracuse University and from Western Maryland College. I have a family that lives here. I've raised my children here. I have 3 wonderful daughters, grandchildren, my husband. So I feel that I have a vested interest in Newark. As a wife, a mother, a retired teacher of 34 years from Delaware School for the Deaf, a community leader, I decided that it was time to bring some sense and sensibility to Dover. That is why I decided to run. I have spent my time at the Delaware School for the Deaf. I have been heavily involved in the teachers union. I was teachers union president during the time when Christina was in a very tumultuous state with bankruptcy, race to the top, Chrysler closing, the performance zone schools. So I have a vested interest here. I think that my leadership style is a style that will be very helpful in Dover. I am a listener. I like to say that I'm a problem solver, not a problem maker. Thank you.
Okay, let's say you get elected, you're gonna do your first 6 months in office, Mr. Townsend.
First 6 months in office, the first thing I'll do is work more closely with the Christina School Board and parents as well from the district to address many of the pressing concerns that we have in the district. Right now, I've found knocking on doors that there is not enough communication between the parents, the teachers, and the school board and administration. Certainly, communication isn't going to solve everything, but it's a very important start. And right now, there are a lot of things going on, particularly in the middle schools and high schools, that are putting a damper over the entire district. I tell parents on the doorstep that the elementary schools are performing quite well, actually. It's the middle schools and high schools that we have to revamp. And most people agree with that. There are some parents I talk with who, at the elementary level, they're also having some tough experiences. But the very first thing I intend to do is to begin building the infrastructure that we need in order to make sure that we have more flow of communication between families and the schools so we can more effectively address the issues in education.
First of all, what I do, as soon as I get elected, if I'm the successful candidate, I thank my wife, whom I've been married to for 28 years, in terms of supporting me through this process. But what I would do the first 6 months is to make sure that communication is available to everyone within the 15th district, and collaborate that throughout the rest of the district and throughout the state of Delaware. Because as we spoke earlier in reference to the insurance commission, in terms of what people know in reference to buying property, is a travesty in terms of the fact that people get caught up in the situation not knowing. Well, as the representative for the 15th district, I'll make sure that is not the case, which means that we need to have information. We need to be able to talk and interact with each other. I live in the Cowbell Hunt development, so therefore I need to know what's going on in the development next door to me or over. So therefore, what happened in one development will not happen in the next development. Public safety is a key issue also. As I stated earlier, I think I might have mentioned in my open statement in terms of being a retired law enforcement state parole out of Pennsylvania, working with Newcastle County, what I would do in terms of making sure that we have a safe environment. Because if you follow in terms as to what transpired on a local level or the national level, we're having problems in terms of violent crime, in terms of issues within the community. That is something that we need to know across the board. Everyone needs to know what is transpiring within the community. Education, I'm a key component of that. I grew up in North Philadelphia, and if you know North Philadelphia, it's a rough place to grow up at. I got my education there in 1969, finished high school. From there, I went off to community college. From there, I went to Penn State University. Yes, Penn State University. I know there's an issue, but guess what? I support Penn State University. Also came back, worked for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania for numerous years, got a master's in social administration. From there, I also worked in terms of an investigator for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. I've held a lot of jobs. That is why I'm a proponent in terms of sharing information. What I've earned, what I've done throughout the years, I don't want to hold to myself, because what's the purpose of having all this if you're not going to share with others? So that is what I've learned from talking to people within the community. They want transparency. They want to know what's going on within their community. When we moved here in 1997, no one was talking to us. And even today, in terms of just going out trying to get information. So therefore, we need to know what's going on within our community. That's what I think.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson.
Well, the day after the election, I'm going to pick up the phone and call the likely House Majority Leader, Mr. Schwarzkopf, and say, I very much want to sit on the Committee for Public Education, Transportation, and DELDOT issues, and things pertaining to DENREC and environmental issues, and see if I can encourage him to allow me to participate in those committees. If he has other interests for me, I'm going to try to find out what they are and get up to speed as quickly as possible, so that when I get down to Dover in January, I'll be prepared to hit the ground running. There are many things that I think are important about public education from the years I sat on the school board, raising 3 children. One of them graduating from Delaware, the other Del Tech, and the other one finishing up high school in DeKalb, Callaway, the best public school we have right now in the state of Delaware. One of the things that I think are paramount to turning the public education system around is to do what we can to provide early education as quickly as possible for children to come from lower socioeconomic blocks, free and reduced lunch families typically. They are the children we need to get to at the earliest possible age, so that when every child shows up at the first day of kindergarten, they all know their ABCs, they can all count to 20, they all can identify the word cat, dog, mom, dad, and they're all prepared to start to learn in the classic system. These are the things that have to happen to really turn around public education. Transportation and environment are also important. What we're dealing with, all the people that are involved in the Civic League clearly know what we're confronted with and what's going on in the development process. And the environment, as redevelopment occurs, we have to address that in a more responsible way as well. Thank you.
Probably the first thing I would do if I were to be elected, well, first of all, I thank my wife not to smack me for getting elected again. I've been down here for 20 years, and I think I have a perspective on it that most of the newcomers don't have. I know when you go down here, you're kind of, unless you're a real exception, that you don't really get into doing a lot. First thing I would do is I'd find out who has been working on reapportionment, because I think it's really wrong. It's a big, big issue. How you can represent an area like this map's up here if anyone wants to look at it. It's very difficult. Reapportionment is supposed to bring together communities. You're supposed to be observe political lines. You're supposed to have contiguousness of the area and a whole lot of things, and it's been ignored forever. And that would be one thing I would spend time working on. And of course, within the area that I represent, I'd have to find out what are the different issues, because this area goes from state line, Claymont, all the way over to where Porky Oliver's golf course is, over that way. It's just a ridiculous district. You have to learn what are the issues in the Highlands, what are the issues in 40 acres, what about Wawasset Park, what about in the interior of Wilmington that this goes through, Bellefonte, Bellevue, Holyoke, Claymont, the whole area. I'm pretty sure I know what the issues are. I'm involved in the community. I'm on the work of the library, the Namen's Heritage Commission. I'm on the Budget Oversight Committee for the Reach Academy for girls. I've just been involved in the community forever. Was involved in doing the creation of the Claymont Community Center, the Claymont Coalition, and all that sort of thing. So I'm pretty well tuned to what goes on in Claymont and the area around here.
Thank you.
We've heard 4 people already. No 4 are the same. If elected, I'll be one of 62 legislators down in Dover. All of them are unique. All of them do have passions. They have different passions, but there's a lot of overlap. What I'm going to do, if elected, is I'm going to buy a little black book like Mr. Brady has, and I'm going to have a page for each legislator, and I'm going to find out what are their top issues, what are they passionate about. Because then when issues come up that need a bill, I'm going to be able to go through those pages and say, here are the 7 people we're going to get into a room, we're going to fashion a great bill, we're going to lead with passion, and that's going to work. That does work in Dover. We've seen it work in Dover. The bill that I'm happiest about this year was the payday lending bill. The key sponsors for this were Helene Keeley, a pretty liberal Democrat, and Colin Beniti, a pretty conservative Republican. But they led with passion on this important bill and got it through Dover pretty darn quickly. That's the kind of leadership that I want to do. I am not interested in being prime sponsor on any of those bills, but I want to see that kind of good legislation come through. We can do that by working hard. Our phrase is working harder, working smarter, working together. This approach that I want to use down in Dover uses all 3 of that. That's how I work, that's how I have worked, that's how I will work if you elect me on September 11th. Thank you.
Should you elect me on September 11th, the first 6 months would be the time when I would establish what I call a learning curve. I would learn what's going on. I've never been a politician. I've never worked in Dover. I've visited Dover. I've lobbied for the Christina School District in Dover, but I've never been on the other end. So that would be my learning curve, my time to find out how our government truly runs. Of course, I have passions. I have areas that I care about tremendously, education being one of them, healthcare, jobs, the financial stability of our town and our city. Another area that I care passionately about is equality. And that's equality for all. I have spent my life as an advocate for the deaf community, advocating for services for our children and to make sure that communication is accessible. I try to advocate for the deaf community, including my husband, to be here tonight, but as you can see, there is no interpreter. So the first thing I want to do is make sure that our government is accessible to all citizens in Delaware. Thank you.
Okay, now we're going to start with Mr. That's right. I'm sorry, I forgot to announce that Mr. Bonbach had to leave.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to start with Mr. Brady. What can you tell us about state financing, the bonded debt level over the past 10 years, and the sustainability of both?
Well, one thing I do know is that state employees' health program indebtedness is, or they don't have enough money, and they haven't had it. They have not stepped forward when they did have money. The joint finance I'm talking about, joint finance committee did not put money into the state employees' health program. And you know, you can say, well, I'm not a state employee, but we're all responsible as state taxpayers for to make sure that that is fully funded, or at least addressed soon. As far as funding for our state, I think we should have paid more attention to our smaller companies, smaller businesses, rather than trying to pump money into large companies like Fisker and like Bloom and whoever else we gave big money to. I'd rather see that money have been devoted to small businesses, try to develop smaller business. The word is that small business is the backbone of our economy, and I think that that's where I would go rather than trying big businesses. What was the rest of the question? I'm sorry.
The bonded debt level.
Bonded debt level?
Yeah.
Well, I think within the budget, you have to start paying more attention, put more money into the bond indebtedness, which has not been paid attention to over the years. I was on joint finance my last 2 years, and I used to ask the question, are we gonna put more money into paying down the bond indebtedness? Are we gonna put more money into the healthcare program? And it was always like, and this is the way it was like ignored. And you could say the question.
Stop.
Okay, well,
No, you could say,
make
you
sure that
could,
everybody understands.
you could ask the
Do you
question.
know the current level of state bonded debt and how it has changed over the last 10 years?
No, I don't know. I know it was like $1 billion for the bonded indebtedness last I knew,
Thank you.
and it wasn't being addressed.
Claudia?
Yes,
Go ahead.
okay. Could you please restate the question?
What can you tell us about state financing, the bonded debt level over the past 10 years, and the sustainability of both?
As far as the bonded debt level, I'm going to be very honest, I really cannot address that. Okay, I do not know what it is and how it has changed over the years. As far as the state employees and the health care and pension and benefits that we currently have in 2011, the public employees unions met with representatives from the governor's office and the state legislators and crafted and brought in their own actuaries, and we worked out a plan which still enabled us to maintain current levels where they are today, and I think we need to give that a chance to work. The other part about jobs and what we're going to do and investments, I agree, we need to invest in our small businessmen. They are the backbone of our community. We need to use our economic money wisely. We need to be very careful when we give money to large companies that put our small businesses out of business, such as Home Depot. Put True Value, he moved from Newark. So we need to do all of this very carefully. We need to make sure that we have good corporate citizens that follow the law, are friendly to our environment and labor, and hire in Delaware. And finally, we need to make sure that our economic development is innovative, employers are green, and we have sustainable jobs. Did I hit it?
Thank you.
Yep.
Townsend?
In terms of bonded debt, as I understand the situation to be, it's approximately 1.6 billion today, and that's up from about 600 million somewhere between 7 to 10 years ago, so it's been a dramatic growth. I think that can be cause for concern, but the concern would be driven by reasons that I'm actually not sure sitting here today what the answers would be in regards to when is that bonded debt due? To whom do we owe that debt? Are there terms in that debt that would drastically change the interest rate if certain things were to happen in the economy? What is the interest rate on that debt? Those are the questions I would want to take a closer look at to figure out exactly what the situation is with regard to the bonded debt beyond just the dollar value on it. But I certainly do think that that rate of growth is cause for concern. I think in a down economy, though, it is important that we do collect money and invest it, not spend it, not just spend it, but invest money. And sometimes it does take indebtedness in order to do that. But it's a very complicated question. I want to do some research on to understand exactly the nuances of where we are in that regard. In regards to state financing more broadly, I do have a concern about how limited some of the state revenues are. Again, as I said, I practice law in the area of corporate and business litigation, and that relates to the state franchise tax, business franchise tax, which is one of our top 3 areas of revenue for the state. One of the top 3 areas also is in the field of unclaimed property, and I used to practice in that area before I transitioned. Unclaimed property is probably a very boring topic, as boring as it sounds, so I won't bore you with that at all. But the short of it is that in the past 10 to 15 years, the state has relied on a tremendous amount on hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue from unclaimed property, but that revenue is going to go away in a period of time. That's not consistent. So we have to be very, very careful about the promises that we're making with the money we have now, knowing that money is going to disappear in the future. I think, though, it comes down at the end of the day, though, to investment and not spending. I don't think we can run away from the fact that we should be investing, especially in the area of public education, especially in the area of infrastructure, that will pay dividends down the road. I don't think we should be scared of investing. We just have to hold our elected officials more accountable for explaining the details of why we are making the decisions that we're making.
Thank you.
Bond indebtedness, from what I understand, if we look in terms of Newcastle County as to how they manage their financial status, I think we, in terms of the state legislature, can take an example from them. Bond indebtedness comes when there's money being borrowed in order to make sure we have debt in terms of the debt that we have in the current budget. When we talk about transparency in terms of you and I who sits in this room probably don't know as to what the past budget looked like. So therefore, money has been borrowed based on the bond, which means that it creates financial problems for us in terms of being able to move forward, as well in terms of investing in our schools, as just said, in terms of our infrastructure, because we are now in debt. How do we solve that debt? Technically, what we need to do in terms of building up the state of Delaware, in terms of finding jobs, bringing jobs to this state, so therefore you and I can have an equitable living wage here in the state, as well in terms of paying taxes, in terms of making sure that money is coming in and money is not going out. That is where that bond indebtedness, when you're talking about 1.5, I saw a slight article from Chip Flowers, who's the treasurer, in terms as to where we are. We're not as bad in terms as to what perhaps it might have been described in terms of what we look, because we are moving forward in terms of progress, in terms of the bond that are currently out there, and making sure that we meet that debt obligation. But in order for us to do that, it has to be more transparency in terms of for you and I to understand as to how the state is guided, how the state representative, how the state senators and all, and even in terms of Governor Markell, who's the current governor now, is managing the finance of the state of Delaware. We perhaps don't know that, so therefore we continue to get debt from the educational point of view, the law enforcement point of view, Department of Correction, what is their indebtedness in terms of the state of Delaware, so therefore we need to do a better management job in terms of managing the funds, the money that we currently have. So therefore, the indebtedness in terms of the bond, hopefully, based on Chip Flower, will get better as we continue to manage and strategize in terms as to how we're spending money. We cannot continue to spend what we don't have. So therefore, we have to pull back. It's the same thing in terms of if you're running a house. How do we make sure that we have enough money to meet the obligations, meet the bills? Same thing in terms of the budget. Thank you.
We're at 7:30 now, just so you know.
Good. Okay.
Having the experience of working with Mr. Mulholland over the past few years, I know that this is a passionate issue for him, not only at the county level, but the state level. And I think Mr. Townsend's pretty close with about 1.6 billion as far as the state debt service, total state debt. It's an issue that whether we're talking about personal finances and how much we owe on our mortgage, or the state and how they sell off bonds, but in both circumstances, whether we look at it at county or state level, both systems are maintaining a AAA bond rating so that they're not overextending themselves to the point that we're really in jeopardy. The question is, how far do you want to go down that road, and how far out ahead of yourself do you want to get in that process? One of the things that influences that is the domestic product of the state of Delaware and what we as a state can generate as far as funds, and how that allows us to service that debt over time. That being the case, I worry about us continuing to sell bonds when we're in an economic downturn that nobody has clearly defined how we're gonna get out of it. I mean, it has stabilized and it's not collapsing the way it was in 08 and 09, but it's not really taken off either. So to have concern about how we continue to borrow money and invest money is something that we have to do on a very, I guess, frugal basis until we can really see positive upturns in the economy.
Okay, now instead of asking you the question, I'm gonna read something and I want you to comment. This was published a couple days ago by John Stapleford of the Civic League. He was talking about Delaware's faces a fiscal cliff. A 25% increase in the gross receipts tax effective January 2009 was automatically repealed at the end of March of 2012. The 8% increase in the gross receipts tax effective January 2010 will automatically expire at the end of 2013. Similarly, the January 2010 increase in the PIT, personal income tax, from a top rate of 5.95 went to 6.95 and will also expire at the end of 2013. Now, if I read that too fast, the bottom line is that two taxes that account for 1/3 of the state's revenue are going to go away. How do you address that on your legislative trip down to Dover in January of 2013? Mr. Brady?
So, you said they go away. I didn't catch that.
They were sunsetted. They're automatically repealed.
And the personal income tax is going up to 6.9 or down to 5.9 or
It's
what?
going from 6.95 down to 5.95.
Where it's been for years.
Yes,
Chuck, so in other words, both sunset and both have to go into hearings,
right.
and that's what that means for everybody.
You'll have decisions to make.
Yeah.
So how do you address it?
Well, the headline on the article was,
Yeah.
like the nation, Delaware faces its own fiscal cliff. And for you good folks who are running for the state legislature, were you aware of it? Well, you don't have to answer that, but what would you do to resolve what's been set forth in this document, in this article?
Well, I did hear that. It went over my head, to be honest, because when I first went down there years ago, the personal income tax rate was 19.6 or 19.5, something like that. And over the many years, it was brought down to 5.9. And I think sometime, if you go down there and those things happen, you just have to look at what they say they want to do, where are those taxes going, and you have to look at what do you need, where can you cut spending, and where you can, if you have to increase taxes, how far can you do it, what taxes would you increase if you have to increase taxes. And I know when you start talking about increasing taxes, everyone says, well, I don't want to hear about that one. But there's probably times when you need to bump it up a little bit, or maybe you can cut some kind of spending. I don't know. You have to look at what all the factors are. That's a difficult question to try to answer out of the
Again,
blue.
I'm not trying to sandbag anybody, but whenever these things pop up in the paper, we gotta try to get your 2 cents worth. Ms. Bob?
Okay, I was aware of that, and I'm not sure why anybody would sunset money. And I know that's not a popular thought right now because of our economic times, but it just doesn't make sense that this was how the law was written. I think, with that being said, we are going to have to make up what will not be there. Tighten our belts. We can also look at other forms of taxes, such as, are we taxing the LLCs properly? Are we taxing corporations properly? I also think that by growing some of our jobs here in Delaware, that's going to help stimulate the economy, which is another way that we can generate money. For example, we could generate money for us with the healthcare industry. That is a huge industry which can bring lots of jobs to Delaware and could be very cost effective to us. So we're going to have to look at, are we going to raise taxes, where we're going to raise them, and if we're not, where are we going to get our money from? And I say one of the ways is by bringing in sustainable industry.
Thank you. Now,
Well, in terms of the sunsetting provisions, I certainly understand why we have them, especially when you're talking about taking money out of the pockets of hardworking men and women. The idea that we might need it at a certain point in time, but might not need it 5 years from now, to me suggests that we should have a 3 to 5 year sunset provision in regards to tax increases. But then when that comes around, and we see those 3 years or 5 years comes around, and we've seen this on the federal level, you have to fight about it. You have to say, well, wait a second now, do we really want to raise taxes again? And it's going to be frustrating to talk about raising taxes as if we're not talking about funding our schools, and funding our roads, and funding our police, and our fire and ambulance. That's what we're talking about. And so yes, it's a tough decision to make in regards to knowing that we are taking money out of people's pockets, away from their paychecks. But I know as a taxpayer now, and I've got plenty of student loan debt, I've got a mortgage I want to save for, a down payment I want to save for, I've got a wedding, and possibly a honeymoon to save for. But every 2 weeks when my paycheck comes in, and I see that money deducted, I don't feel like it's being taken from me. As long as I know that we can look around and we have stable roads to drive on, and we have police who are going to respond quickly and investigate thoroughly, and we have classrooms that are educating our children for the jobs of tomorrow, and we have teachers that are being rewarded for the infinitely hard work they put in year after year. So specifically in regards to going down to Dover and knowing that these 2 of the 3 tax sources are being sunsetted soon, or all 3 of the 3, it's going to involve tough decision making. But I want to keep our eye on the ball. I want to keep our eye on knowing that we need to find ways to fund the important services that we need as a stable community. And in regards to specific numbers, I can't say anything beyond that. It comes down to the values that you're bringing to the table and how you look at the taxes.
thank you.
We just discussed the issue in terms of bond indebtedness, in terms of management, in terms of fiscal management, in reference to the budget. So here we are again in terms of talking about tax and perhaps losing the tax base. And I think the people in the great state of Delaware will say, oh, panic again, because number one, you're talking about losing finance, something that's used to, as we talked about in terms of education, we talked about in terms of transportation, we need that revenue stream to continue on. So as a state rep, I will be facilitating to try to see in terms of getting an extension, so therefore, we can best look in terms as to how we manage the money that we currently have. Even in terms of looking at bond indebtedness, how we deal with that issue as well in terms of the sunset law in reference to the taxes. We have to make sure that we can manage what we currently have before we go back to the great people of the state of Delaware and say, hey, we now need to increase taxes. No one wants to hear that. I don't want to hear that. I'm sure you don't want to hear that. So we, as state reps and other state elected officers, have to make sure that we're managing. When we come back to you, you'll fully understand that, yes, we need to do A in order to do B. And if that is the case, then you understand that's where we're at. But we just can't come back and say, because we have reached this point where the sunset law is going to expire, that we have to raise taxes. That is not an option for me. I find that very hard to challenge because, number one, you're talking about taking funds out of people's pocket now. Cost of living is going up, not down. I know when I retired in 2001, I retired on a certain salary, and it was right there. But now here's 2012, it is up here because of the cost of living. So now you're talking about taxes. Sunshine law, they're going to change. I think in this room tonight, we're ready to say, okay, let's look at the law. Let's look at what we have in terms of bond indebtedness and where we're headed from a financial point of view in reference to the state of Delaware, because that's what we have to do. Then all of us collectively come together and make a decision as to what we're willing to do. It's not in terms of us as state legislator. You're the guiding force. You're telling us what to do. So I'm asking you, if I'm the successful candidate come September 11th, then tell me. I'm not just going to go down there and say, hey, well, this is what I think you should do. I said, no, we need to look at everything from a totality financially.
Thank you.
What was the change in the gross receipts tax, Chuck? 1%?
The 25% increase in the grocery cheese tax effective January of '09 will automatically be repealed at the end of 2000.
So it will be a reduction of 25%.
Right.
Clearly, we've got to think about all of them on an individual basis. Nobody's talking about increasing taxes. The question is, are we going to maintain them where they are in how they were passed? As far as the decision-making that was going on in '09, it makes perfect sense. No elected official at that point in time wanted to say that they were gonna raise taxes indefinitely. So to put them in a sunset clause where potentially they could go down, they had some defense politically as to how they could justify what they were doing. If I remember correctly, the initial projections for the budget in 2009 were we were going to be $400 million short of what we needed. And they needed to come up with a way to raise the revenue that they were going to need to cover the expenses of running state government. There's some empathy there for that situation. I don't want to see any increases in taxes, and I want to see critical and responsible decision-making as to how we maintain taxes. But if we find that our expectations, that's another thing, that I think there was an expectation or an argument being made that, you know, in 3 or 4 years, the economy will be back on the right road and we'll have incomes rising pretty quickly and we won't need this, so to sunset it would be perfectly sensible. Yet, we find ourselves in a set of circumstances where the economy doesn't seem to be getting worse right now, but then again, it's not taking off like a rocket either. We're not back to where we were in 2007 economically, so we have to look at that. Would it be nice to guarantee every voter in the state of Delaware, hell, yeah, I'm ready to let the sunset clause kick in. We're not going to maintain that. We're going to let it all go away. First receipt drops by 25. The upper tax bracket drops by 1. We can't make that promise right now.
Okay, starting with Mr. Bailey, give us a 30-second close.
Mr. Brady?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
He said Bailey.
I'm sorry. I knew I was talking about.
First name George or Dave?
Let's take a couple minute break right after that, too, please.
Go ahead.
Okay, well, I was sitting back, as I said earlier, I was sitting back minding my own business, enjoying my retirement. I retired from the school district after 33.5 years, and I was out of legislature for quite a while until I saw this business with the, I mean, I guess it's beating a dead horse because it demonstrates what's going on. They talk about the good old boy thing down there in Dover, and I guess I wasn't part of it because that's why I didn't get involved in the gerrymandering in 2002. But this is just no, I don't want to stop. This demonstrates what goes on down there.
Now.
And I'm going to work on doing this first thing I'm going to do, and I just feel so strongly about it. Or I
Next
wouldn't have been
person.
here. Thank you.
I'd like to thank you for inviting me here today. As you can see, I have a lot to learn, but as an educator, that's what I've spent my whole life doing. Learning, researching, listening, and that is what I promise I will do if I am elected. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for being here tonight. Normally I'd be knocking on doors, but it's a nice way to rest my feet. Mr. Brady had mentioned the Good Old Boy Network. That's one thing that I hear often on the doorsteps, and I think that we all know in the CNBC rankings in terms of the quality of life in Delaware and where Delaware ranks overall as a state are very disheartening. But it's not about a ranking and how we compare to other states. It's about how we compare to what we want to be. And I think there's too seldomly do we hear our elected officials talking about things in a very invigorating way, in a very comprehensive way, and talking and engaging with the community. There's only so much we can do without working together, and that's the kind of state senator I want to be. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Burke.
I'll give you my open statement in terms of who I am and what I would do, but we also had 3 questions in terms of what I do in the first 6 months that I'm elected. I tell you, I'll thank my wife, and also we talked about the bond levy in terms of financial management, something that I will facilitate as I continue to seek the election for the state rep position. Also, we talked in terms as to where we are in reference to the Sunshine Club, as to how looking at the tax base. That's something that the people need to know as to where we are. That's something I will continue to facilitate as I look to get elected come September 11th. So I say thank you to the Civic League for having me here, and thanks for this opportunity to be able to come to this kind of forum and tell you who I am and why I'm running.
Thank you.
I want to thank everybody as well. We have a few more show up this evening than we normally do for the Civic League meetings, and I appreciate you all coming. All this ties back to my interest in doing what I'm doing and my involvement in the community for the past 20 years is all tied back to the fact that I love my family, I care about my state, I care about my community, and I want my kids, as they become adults, to decide that Delaware is a reasonable place for them to stay, and it's well cared for, and it's something that they enjoy.
Stop.
And they don't have to run away from the place. Thank you.
I want to thank you all for coming. Now, wait informally, get out of the way. We got 4 more people coming up.